From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here, and here's today's lineup. Awaiting to offer his latest perceptions on the grain markets, K-State's Dan O'Brien. He'll talk about the seemingly endless flow of feed grain and soybean sales to China, how long that might continue. And Dan discusses the impact of cattle feeders switching from corn to wheat as their primary feedstuff, which he says could reset the wheat market, as he put it. Also today, K-State's Jenny Ifft will be along to look at the factors affecting you row crop producers' crop insurance decisions this spring, and how two new options might figure in, the supplemental coverage and enhanced coverage options. Also on Kansas agricultural weather, K-State's Mary Knapp. Plus more for you right here on Agriculture Today. Agricultural producers, landowners, and creditors, you have a partner in your legal and financial needs. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services offers reliable, trusted information and guidance. Whether you need advice for ag credit concerns or are transitioning your operation to the next owner, Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services can assist you in making sound decisions for your business. To learn more, call 800-321-3276 or visit us online. This is Agriculture Today, and thanks for listening in for our Friday edition, where we pick up on the grain markets, first of all, as usual. Standing by is Dan O'Brien, grain market economist with K-State Research and Extension. The primary question is one that has been around for a while now, Dan. Is there an end to China's appetite for U.S. grains? By this past week's action, one would think maybe not.
Well, there is an end out there someplace, and it will come when their expansion of pork and poultry starts to slow down. Again, they're in a catch-up mode. Right now, for the foreseeable coming weeks and months, we seem to be on a strong roll of corn demand on the one hand, grain sorghum on the other, soybeans coming in also. A great thing in terms of the prices that agricultural producers are getting for their crops. This is something we're probably looking at through the first quarter of this year, and really need to drill down and see when does their expansion of livestock feed demand start to slow. So that's really where it's at. And the numbers that we see in terms of forward purchases on these crops, and I guess as long as there's weekly activity, daily weekly activity with new purchases, then the enthusiasm, the support, the behavior of the market continues to be positive. And we're looking at prices on yesterday's close. That would be Thursday, the 28th. March corn, $5.34. Dees, new crop, $4.38, $4.39 thereabouts. Soybeans, $13.53. New crop, $11.31. March hard red winter wheat, upfront contract, $6.26. Same, virtually the same for July. Just tremendous prices, really prices that put us in the ballpark, well, on the backside of what we saw in 2012-13 timeframe. When we got into that period, we were exploding higher, $7, $8 corn, and wheat to 13, and the hard red spring to even higher, and soybeans really strong also. So we really have tremendous times, not unprecedented. We have been here before, but compared to where we've been since those highs, just tremendous run. And Eric, we can talk if you want on all the demand pull and the tightness of supply that's been pulled out of the country. Where do our domestic problems start to happen?
Let's get into that, if we might, and let's begin with corn. Whether or not there's enough to go around there, Dan.
Well, according to the USDA numbers, we have enough supplies to get us to about a 1.55 billion bushel carryout. However, with what we're hearing from different parts of the industry, they're gearing up for export demand to go even deeper into those ending stocks to get us somewhere to 1.2, 1.3 billion bushels. How strong and how long does this thing go? Do we get even closer than that, down to a billion bushels? If you get down to that in corn, given that the total amount of use is projected to be about, pull up the latest numbers, about 14.6 billion bushels. You get down to a billion bushels, you're below 10% stocks to use. 10% would be 1.4 billion. Well, you get down below that, you're in an area where as you look at those price versus stocks to use relationships, you're on the part of the curve that's starting to really move strongly higher. And so it's very inelastic, and you have people worried about supplies. That happens at about the time of, well, it would probably be operative coming into the end of March when we're looking at the prospective plantings report. And then it may still be bringing us heightened crop acreage and crop production worries for anything that we see that's a threat to this crop, any of these summer's crops, coming into the acreage report at the end of June. So those acreage reports this year and the stocks reports are just going to be stellarly important in terms of helping us to figure out how to ration usage and at what price for the old crop, and to have some idea of what our prospects are to literally we'll be rebuilding stocks coming into the fall of this year. So I would say when you look at the normal signal that we have for corn versus soybean acreage in the U.S., you look at new crop November soybeans, new crop Dece corn, and that ratio is about 2.58. Interesting, you look at new crop forward contract bids at Garden City, at Salina, at Topeka, got a ratio about 2.36 in Garden City for cash forward contract prices. There at about 2.4, a little higher ratio, favoring soybeans just minusculely in Salina, and 2.57, about 2.6 in Topeka. So that kind of would square with where we grow soybeans and where we grow corn at, and where our demand centers are. So as you head from west to east, you have east, the forward contract price ratios favor soybeans. The farther east you go, they favor corn farther to the west. And that doesn't square too far from that's where our demand's at, where we tend to grow more corn.
Staying with corn for a moment, but bringing it down to Kansas conditions, where at our cattle feeding facilities, the economics may be suggesting that wheat is a better overall buy as a feed input, and there's evidence of that switchover out there right now, you say.
Well, you look at the cash price ratios between the cash wheat prices and cash corn prices in Colby and Garden City, just taking the highest price amongst the various elevators in those areas. You've got a price ratio in Colby about 1.09 of wheat to corn. In Garden City, it's 1.06. Every place else in the state, it's about 1.4 and higher. So out here in the West, where we have some wheat supplies out here, et cetera. And when you look at the national ending stocks, 836 million bushels, stocks to use 39%. It's shaping up, again, and being verified, I guess, by discussion in the country, that as we hear, as we talk to people, as they voluntarily tell us, we're feeding more wheat, given all the high-priced corn we have. And that ratio is not far from that 1.5, 1.6. Well, it's at 1.6 in the Garden City area, where 1.06, pardon me, where wheat and corn are a break-even. And here, that's just break-even. It sounds like to keep going and not have to get into the scrum of this competition to pull corn in, that we're seeing wheat feeding coming in. So where does the wheat market go? Normally we pay attention to exports as the driver for wheat, and they are terribly important. But this year, if we add 100, 200, 300 million bushels more of wheat feeding, then that 836 million bushel ending stocks figure for wheat goes down to 500 or 400. In the extreme, that for wheat would be that would be an area we just haven't seen for a good long time. We tend to hold a lot more wheat supplies in hand. I think it's because it's a food grain. So anyway, I guess the ramifications of what we're seeing in the feed grain markets are coming over into wheat supplies, and now I think we're probably breathing a sigh of relief that we have that amount of wheat around. We always thought we were a residual supplier of last resort for the world. Well, right now we're wondering if we're a residual supplier of last resort for our own domestic uses, given the demand pulse happening for both grain, sorghum, and corn otherwise.
But it really could be a turning point for wheat, as you called it, a reset of this market, if there's a substantial clearing of what have been, for some time, burdensome wheat supplies. The repercussions of this could extend quite a ways out.
Yeah, and you don't want to just bang the drum to get everybody all shook up. But I would say that what's happening now is happening at the same time that over in Russia and Ukraine, particularly Russia, you're looking at actions by their government to limit exports to some degree to stem domestic food inflation. And other headlines, Argentina wondering about limiting exports of wheat also. So when you start seeing major export suppliers getting worried about the rate of these crops going out of their own ports, then you've got the type of supply-demand situation that for wheat yesterday, where you saw 626, 630, those type of ranges for futures all the way out to March of 2022. So I think it's a time to try to think clearly with regard to what's going on. And obviously we have high prices, and I think we need to be watchful of not just looking at the euphoria of what's taking us higher, but to try to look out there and understand what risks there could be in this down the road. Hard to see any downside at the moment, but I do think, Eric, in all honesty, that as high prices start bringing us to increased acreage and starts to pare back usage where it can be pared back, that eventually you put forces in motion that will change all this. And the first thing to look at will be how many acres we plant of these key crops. And so that'll be a big thing. It'd be a great year for the whole system to have a good crop year. Mm. It'd be a year almost amazing to consider if we didn't. And you just have a ton of volatility and some real repercussions in usage in just industries here and abroad.
Dan, have a good weekend. Thanks for being along with us once more.
Thanks, Eric. Take care.
His weekly insight on the grain markets, that's K-State Research and Extension grain market economist Dan O'Brien from his office in Colby, Northwest Kansas. Agriculture Today continues after this.
Hamburgers, roast, ribs, steak, or whatever you prefer. Beef, it's what's for dinner. Kansas cattle farmers produce 7.5 million head of cattle per year. It takes about 7 tablespoons of peanut butter to get the same amount of protein in 1 serving of lean beef. Support your local Kansas farmers and ranchers. Eat beef. This message was brought to you by the K-State Animal Sciences Leadership Academy participants.
Next up for you on Agriculture Today, we're going to venture into the ever-complex world of crop insurance coverage. And our guest just recently presented information on what's new on that front at a K-State Risk and Profit mini-session. Jenny Ifft is with us, agricultural policy specialist with K-State Research and Extension. Saying that earlier, Jenny, because as we go seemingly year by year, there's some new twist to crop insurance policies, and that is the case this year as well.
Yeah. There are some new products. So there's a large amount of decisions that are going to have to be made for risk management. So with folks that are growing field crops, corn, soybeans, wheat, sorghum, and others, they're going to have to pick whether or not they want to enroll in ARC or PLC. You can do some private options, forward contracting, futures, and options. And then there's crop insurance. There's the usual choices. Plus, we have a new product called Enhanced Coverage Option. A lot of farms are increasingly looking at the Supplemental Coverage Option, SCO. That's a relatively new product that's just starting to gain a lot of interest in the state.
And we're going to dig into what you're calling high coverage policies. Mm-hmm. But back to the basic of the value of crop insurance coverage and the whole risk management mix on the farm. It's become almost an essential, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's the primary risk management tool for production agriculture, for crop production, for most major crops in the state. Almost all corn, soybean, and wheat acres are enrolled in some type of crop insurance. It's the primary way farm operations can protect their costs or protect their investment from unexpected changes to prices or yield declines. It's the way that you can make your decisions and know that you're going to get a certain amount of revenue.
Explain further then these two, quote, high coverage options, the supplemental coverage option and this new enhanced coverage option. what they entail and what details are important to producers.
Right. So first I'll start with a supplemental coverage option. This is only available if you do PLC, so price loss coverage. So for farms that select that option, they can also think about SCO. And what it's going to do is it's going to take you from your base coverage level, whether that's 50% or 85%, and it's going to bring you up to 86% coverage. One important thing to remember, though, is that that increase in coverage is going to be based on a county level trigger. So that's only going to pay out if you see a county level decline in yield or revenue. This year, there's a new one called the Enhanced Coverage Option, ECO, and this is going to take you up to an even higher yield or revenue guarantee. You can go from 86% all the way up to 95%. So ECO can be used with ARC or PLC, and you can use it with SCO, but you don't have to. So you could have your base policy and then just purchase ECO.
That's the basic premise of the two. What do producers need to think about in considering them? There's give and take to these higher coverage policies.
Right. Well, I think the overarching message right now is that if you just look at the premium costs for these, you're going to have some sticker shock. Your premium costs could double or triple or more. So for me, what's useful in considering the value of these policies is to take a step back and look at it from a farm management perspective. So these policies, in short, they have a much higher likelihood of paying out. That's the reason for the higher cost. But how do you think about those higher costs and sort of how you're making your risk management decisions?
So really it comes down to the intent of the individual as what they expect out of their crop insurance policies in a very general vein, right?
Right. And so when you start thinking about that, it's useful to think about the base policy or the typical policy that's being purchased for most crop farmers in Kansas right now. And that's about 75% coverage level revenue protection. So you're protecting 75% of your expected revenue. Most farms take the enterprise unit option. So they're insuring their whole farm, not at the field level. And if you look at that 75% guarantee, one way of seeing that is it's covering most of your expenses. So if you have a loss below 75%, you'll still be able to pay back your operating loan or pay back any investments you've made for that year. And I think there's a couple different reasons from a farm management perspective why people are locked in that level. First is the cost. You may be looking at $10 to $15 per acre, depending where you are in the state. That can vary quite a bit. But it only comes out to about 3% of total operating expenses or variable expenses. So it doesn't seem like a huge expense, relatively speaking. The other point for that is it can also seem like a good value. That's a somewhat subjective term. But if you're looking at 70 to 80% coverage levels, the federal government share or the premium subsidy, it's going to be about 68 to 80% that's going to be covered by the federal government. So in that way, you could see it as a pretty good value. You're really getting a lot out of this program. And the last one that I'm going to come back to is it's a way to protect your investment in the crop. It's a way to pay back your operating loans, make sure that you got all those expenses covered.
That is sort of a baseline of using crop insurance, if you will. You say this new product, the enhanced coverage option, may take it a step further if one wants to, put it this way, get more out of their policy.
Right. How I like to look at SCO or ECO is that you're insuring part of your profit margin. And so that really does require a sort of shift in how you think about risk management decisions. So if I go back to that farm management perspective again, first of all, you can think of it as protecting your profit. The other way you can think about it is you're maximizing your return on investment into crop insurance. So you want to get the maximum expected returns over the long term. Now, that's sort of those terms, expected returns and over the long term, are really important here. That's because in the years that you don't have any payouts under these policies, that premium is going to seem like it's eating away at some of those profit margins. Now, in some estimates, you could be having payouts, 50%, 60% of the time with these policies. That's one reason why they're relatively more expensive. You should come out ahead over the time. But in the years when you don't, it's going to bite a little bit. The other component about where you have to be careful, again, is that county level trigger. So the county level trigger, this is going to seem kind of, might seem a little bit strange to say it this way, but it keeps it relatively affordable. Because if it was an individual farm level trigger, it would be even more expensive. So really the only way you can have these high coverage policies as a part of the federal crop insurance program is with that county trigger. But it's something, again, that you need to understand really well. So when is that going to pay off? What is your individual county level guarantee for the crop and the practice that you're covering? What has those county level guarantees looked like in the past as well? So again, that's something you could talk about with your crop insurance agent if you're thinking seriously about these products.
All of this, though, is driven by individual producer philosophy, though, Jenny, and there's no one right answer, is there? That's why there are so many options on the table.
Right. There's no right answer at all, and that's one thing that I do like to emphasize is there's not a right way to manage, but it's always helpful to understand what management guidelines or principles you're following. I think a lot of these things people probably do implicitly. So, you're really focused on getting a good value, but maybe you haven't fully thought through what the implications of that are. Or what are the different measures of good value? Is it the total value of the premium subsidy? Is it the share of the premium subsidy? Is it the premium to liability? All these things are going to capture this good value. So however you want to manage your farm operation, however you want to make your risk management decisions, it's good to know what's the underlying principle is and what are the implications of that.
One constant, though, is that this requires rather intensive study on the producer's part as to what alternatives are at their disposal before they pull the trigger on the exact policies they'll sign.
Definitely. And I think even more so right now for this sort of 75% revenue protection enterprise unit level, that's something people are familiar with. They've had a lot of experience with the cost, how much it pays out. Agents are going to be really familiar. When you have these higher level coverage policies, they're new, they're working differently. It's something that's going to take some time to work through, and I think that's pretty important given the cost.
Then there needs to be a rather extensive dialogue with one's agent.
Yes, that's a very important relationship.
But you here at K-State as well are going to continue to crank out information that will be of benefit to this decision likewise.
Definitely. There's already a lot of information about crop insurance on agmanager.info. We're also going to be putting out some more materials especially on the enhanced coverage option over the next month. This is a new policy. We're still learning about it, but we've gotten we've seen a lot of interest in more information on the policy, so we're going to try to get out some materials over the next month.
So keep your eyes open for that at agmanager.info. But when producers hear about yet more alternatives, they may be a bit reluctant to explore those. It sounds like you would suggest that they at least give them a look, process what they might do for them.
Can't hurt.
Always a pleasure. Jenny, thank you for being with us once again. And she shared information on, as she titled it, Navigating High Coverage Policies as part of a K-State mini risk and profit session here recently. Jenny Ifft is an agricultural policy specialist with K-State Research and Extension on those new features available through the Federal Crop Insurance Program. We'll be back with more after these moments away. You're listening to the K-State Radio Network and Agriculture Today.
Did you eat today? Thank a farmer. A way to get more involved in agriculture is through 4-H and FFA. Through 4-H and FFA, we have been given multiple opportunities to grow as leaders and learn more about agriculture.
You can learn skills related to jobs, public speaking skills, and you get the opportunity to travel around the country and meet new people.
If you want more information about getting more involved in 4-H and FFA, visit them on their websites at kansasffa.org and kansas4h.org.
Broadcasting from the campus of Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. Next up, today's agricultural news headlines, courtesy in part of DTN. More than 24 Republican senators, led by Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa, introduced a resolution seeking to preserve the Trump administration's Navigable Waters Protection Rule that was put forth by the EPA, and it replaced the Obama-era Waters of the U.S. rule, if you'll recall. Quoting Ernst here, everyone should agree that clean water should be a national priority, but again in her words, I can't stand by and allow for another Washington power grab that will make it harder for Iowans to farm, ranch, and build, according to, again, Joni Ernst. The Trump administration's EPA rule set a significantly narrower definition of which waters are covered under federal protections, excluding wetlands connected to covered waters through groundwater, as well as many ditches and ephemeral streams or streams that flow with rainwater. The Biden administration is expected to revisit the issue, as it's among the Trump-era rules that the new administration has under review. Following pressure from farm groups and producers themselves, the State Department late yesterday issued a statement declaring that H-2A workers from South Africa may now qualify for national interest exemptions that would allow them to work in the country. That announcement comes after producers and ag organizations had raised concerns that President Biden's order, signed back on Monday, creating a temporary ban on travel of non-citizens into the U.S. from South Africa, as well as other countries. That ban goes beyond South Africa, also bans travelers from Brazil, China, most of Europe, Iran, Ireland, and the United Kingdom. But for most farmers tied to large equipment, that ban that raised the most concerns would on travelers from South Africa. Before yesterday's news release from the State Department, Biden's travel ban did not spell out any specific exemptions for foreign guest workers from those countries. The only exemption, which would be decided by the Secretary of State and Secretary of Homeland Security, would be for any non-citizen who would be allowed into the U.S. for national interest. Now, on that, farm groups immediately reached out to the Secretaries of State and Homeland Security to classify H-2A guest workers as necessary for national interest. Incidentally, agriculture last year brought in 275,000 H-2A guest workers, of which equipment operators accounted for 15,000 positions. South Africa accounted for roughly 5,000 H-2A workers, the vast majority of which were equipment operators. USDA researchers are working together now to better understand climate science. With a look at that, the USDA's Stephanie Ho.
USDA's Agricultural Research Service and the Forest Service lead a collaboration across the agency called USDA Climate Hubs.
We feel that we have a wonderfully important infrastructure for the United States in terms of our ability to respond to climate variability.
That was ARS Administrator Shavonda Jacobs-Young.
The 10 climate hubs are really, really important for helping to collect that information and to package it, and in some cases translate it into information that people can use.
USDA's advantage is not only its wide diversity of scientists, but also experts at land-grant universities.
We're able to take a systems approach to a lot of the climate questions and climate challenges that we face. And so we can look at the genetics, the environment, the management, and because of tools like artificial intelligence and machine learning, we can now take these huge data sets and bring them together to really help us develop the decision tools.
This is Stephanie Ho for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
And the USDA has temporarily suspended making payments under the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, citing the regulatory review underway by the Biden administration. FSA local offices will continue to accept applications during that evaluation period. Well, young people who are preparing to study for a career in agriculture may now apply for a special scholarship offered annually through Kansas Wheat. It bears the name of a Kansas farmer who truly set the pace for wheat industry leadership here in the state and in the nation. Marcia Boswell has the details on this week's Kansas Wheat Scoop. Marcia?
High school seniors pursuing careers in agriculture are encouraged to apply for the 2021 Herb Clutter Memorial Scholarship. The scholarship was established in 2009 to honor Herb Clutter's influential role in organizing leadership groups on behalf of Kansas wheat producers and is administered by the Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Thanks to the generosity of the Herb Clutter family, the scholarship was increased to $1,000 beginning in the 2020 academic year. According to Kansas Wheat CEO Justin Gilpin, with support of the family, we are able to double the amount of the scholarship in honor of Herb Clutter and what he has done for the wheat industry. This scholarship helps to identify and support new and upcoming future leaders in agriculture. The scholarship fund will award one $1,000 scholarship per year to a college or university-bound incoming freshman from Kansas pursuing a career in the field of agriculture. To be eligible for this scholarship, applicants must plan to be a full-time student at any 2- or 4-year Kansas college or university. Recipients will be selected based on academic achievement, leadership qualities, and career objectives focused around the field of agriculture. Recipients will receive the scholarship to be applied toward tuition for the student's college or university education. The scholarship is non-renewable. Gilpin said COG is proud to support the young men and women who are the future of the wheat industry. We are looking for students who are passionate about agriculture and not only excel in the classroom, but also in their communities and extracurricular activities. The Herb Clutter Memorial Scholarship was established through a fund in memory of Herbert W. Clutter, a farmer from Holcomb and the first president of the National Association of Wheat Growers, which was established in 1948. Clutter encouraged Kansas wheat farmers to organize as a strong unified voice, which led to the formation of the Kansas Association of Wheat Growers in 1952. He encouraged research in education and industrial uses of wheat, improved variety development, and methods to produce the best product at the lowest cost. Clutter's efforts led to the formation of the Kansas Wheat Commission by the Kansas Legislature in 1957. Applicants of the Herb Clutter Memorial Scholarship must complete the scholarship application, which includes a 400 to 500-word essay discussing why they have chosen to pursue a career in agriculture. The selection committee will use this essay, along with the student's application, in determining the scholarship winner. The scholarship application is available on our website at kswheat.com/clutter. Application deadline is March 12th. For Kansas Wheat, I'm Marcia Boswell.
Thanks, Marcia. Well, more rainfall is on its way to Kansas in the next 24 hours. How much to expect? Mary Knapp will tell us next here on Agriculture Today. For 25 years, K-State Research and Extension's Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services has been providing a no-cost, confidential place to call in and visit with an agricultural lawyer. Our experts are available to help you producers handle legal and financial issues. Explore your options and generate solutions. Call us at 800-321-3276 or visit us online. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. This Agriculture Today closes out with the very latest on Kansas agricultural weather. What's happened this past week and what's ahead. Aboard once more is Research and Extension climatologist at K-State, Mary Knapp. And Mary, how much of a dent was put in the drought from the moisture in one form or the other that has blessed Kansas the last several days?
Yes, this last week has been very positive as far as the moisture goes. The entire state averaged above normal for the week. The southwest and western divisions weren't as well watered as the eastern and central parts of the state. The southwest was about 1.5 times their normal, but the difference in the amount of moisture was just about 1/10 of an inch. And as we well know, 1/10 of an inch doesn't go very far in Kansas dry winter day. So as far as the drought goes, we did see a retreat of the abnormally dry conditions in eastern Kansas, particularly on the southern border of it. There was one little pocket of moderate drought in that same region that improved to abnormally dry, and that was an area that saw 1.5 to 2 inches of moisture. So again, well watered, if you will. Most of that was in the form of rain. The rain-snow boundary was very, very sharp, so some areas saw a little bit and some areas saw a lot. The north central into central Kansas was the area that saw the most abundant moisture. And in that area, we did see some improvement in the severe drought into a moderate drought situation. By no means enough to erase it, but it was enough to make some improvement in that area.
How much relief for western Kansas, though? Comparatively little.
Comparatively little. In fact, there was a little bit of an expansion of the abnormally dry conditions on the southeastern edge of the drought situation out west. Unfortunately, a lot of that moisture in western Kansas was falling in the eastern part of southwest Kansas into south central, and that area was already drought-free, so not any improvement in that. The far southwest around the Elkhart area didn't see as much moisture, and so it wasn't making the improvements that we might have hoped for.
But there's another opportunity coming, which we'll talk about. Before we get to that, though, the temperatures this past week, a little on the colder side for this time of the year, weren't they?
Actually, they were. We saw sub-zero readings in the western areas. In the eastern areas where there was more moisture, it was not nearly so cold, lows in the mid-20s compared to the sub-zero readings out west. So slightly cooler the last couple of days, but the week as a whole was about 2 degrees warmer than normal. So surprising, but we are in the middle of winter, and while we've seen some mild days, we would historically expect a lot colder.
So, too, that outlook for the weekend. A rain event that will push in from the west, and it may well canvass the entire state, you say.
Well, it looks promising for most of the state. Unfortunately, that very far southwest corner may miss out on that. The quantitative precip forecast for the week ending next Friday shows 0 precipitation over that corner into the Oklahoma Panhandle. As you move away from that, further north and east, things look a lot more promising, as much as a 1/4 of an inch in west central Kansas and a little bit more as you move into northwest Kansas, which has missed out on a lot of it. But the most promising area is in northeast Kansas, where they may see as much as 1 1/4 inches. So again, the northern areas may fare better on this in contrast to in December, where the southern tier of the state was seeing the moisture. But we'll have to see how that develops and how the actual storm track forms.
And so between those extremes, we're looking at 1/2 inch to 1 inch for the balance of Kansas?
More in the neighborhood of 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch for the central, a large part of the eastern, east central, and southeast. As you go into western Kansas, it's going to be more on the 1/4 to 1/2 inch range. But again, that will be above what they would typically see for a week in this time of the year. We're getting into February, and the amount of moisture we would expect on a daily basis is starting to inch up, but we're still in a dry period for the year.
And once this weekend is past, open weather ahead for next week then?
Well, if we look at the 8 to 14-day outlook, temperatures are expected to be pretty much normal, maybe a little bit on the cool side in the east, but we aren't expecting warmer than normal conditions in any part of the state, which is a contrast from what we've seen for most of January. On the moisture side, they are favoring wetter than normal conditions in the eastern third of the state and normal for the rest of the state. So we'll see how that develops. Unfortunately, if looking at a more extended outlook, it looks like we'll flip back into a drier pattern to go through mid-February into the beginning of March.
And that's a good segue into what we'll finish with. Next week is officially recognized as Fire Awareness Week, and once it dries out again, the potential for wildfires in Kansas will climb once more.
Right. Unfortunately, what we're looking at is we switch into that transitional period as we go from winter into spring. The outlook is more for a series of fronts coming through that are in the dry wind shifting pattern rather than ones bringing moisture. All of the components that would signal a strong fire day.
And as a matter of fact, an article on this very topic has been posted in the Fresh Out e-update newsletter from the agronomy department here at K-State.
Yes, there is an article on the fire weather outlook by Chip Redmond, a fire meteorologist here at K-State. So take a look at that and, again, be planning for what might approach this spring.
That's at agronomy.ksu.edu, posted just yesterday, the latest e-update. Well, Mary, thank you, and have a good weekend.
Thanks, Eric.
Research and Extension climatologist at K-State, Mary Knapp, thanks to you for tuning in, and enjoy your weekend as well. Eric Atkinson here for Agriculture Today. This is the K-State Radio Network.